So hello, thanks for joining us again today to talk about VTA's BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project. I'm Doug Moody, and I'm standing in again today as the facilitator while we continue to work to identify the right long-term facilitator for the CWGs. And we're working with the chairs for the CWGs as part of this process, which is Fred for this downtown Diridon CWG. Next slide, please. So today we're going to focus on sharing the story of how the downtown and Diridon BART stations have been designed and where they're headed. After the presentation, we have some polling questions for you. Then we plan to break into small group discussion rooms where we want to talk with you about priorities for station design. We also have an interactive exercise that we think will be a fun, useful, and insightful way to facilitate discussions during the small group breakout sessions. After the small group breakout sessions, we'll ask each small group to select a CWG member from their group to summarize key takeaways from those discussions to share with the larger group. We also want to reserve as much time as possible for feedback and discussion during the later part of the meeting after VTA gives our relatively short presentation on station design and next steps for station design. So we ask that you limit your questions and comments to clarifying questions until we get to the discussion part of the meeting, which we have a lot of time reserved for. And before we adjourn today, we'd like to share some information with you about next steps for the BSV project and some upcoming engagement opportunities, including for the next phases of station design. Next slide, please. So, before we get into the presentation, would the CWG members present today please introduce themselves to the group just by stating your name and organization to keep it short. And then I'll go down the list and I'll go with folks I see here. Do I see Adina? I don't see Adina, and I see all the names on my screen, even though I have a big window showing names. So if I miss someone, please let me know and chime in. Alan, I believe you're here. Alan, you want to say hi?
Alan Williams of this Campus Community Association, Navy Park.
Thank you very much. Bert, I don't see Bert. Carol Austin, don't see Carol. Charlie Foss. Oh, there's Adina. Hi, Adina. Adina's connecting. Adina, you came right in for the introduction part of the meeting. You want to say hello? Just name an organization.
Adina Levin, Friends of Caltrim.
Thank you, Adina. I didn't see Charlie. I do see Chris. Chris, you want to say hi?
Chris Morrissey with the San Jose Arena Authority.
Thank you, Chris. Dana, I don't see Dana either. Derek, don't see Derek. Edgar, I don't think I see Edgar. Elizabeth, I know you're here. Elizabeth, you want to say hi?
Hi, yeah, Elizabeth Chin-Hell from San Jose Downtown Resident Association.
Thank you very much. And Fred, I know you're here. Fred, our chair, you want to say hello?
Yeah, Fred Buzo from Spur in San Jose.
Thank you. I don't see Jeffrey. Jim, I know you're here. You want to say hi, Jim?
Jim Goddard, Shark Sports and Entertainment.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome. And then Larry, I don't think I saw Larry. And Scott, Chloe, I know you're standing in for Scott today. You want to say hi to the group?
Yep, I'm definitely not Scott. Chloe Ship, Deputy Director at the San Jose Downtown Association.
Thank you, Chloe, and welcome. So thank you very much to the CWG members. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Bernice to give a quick overview of the project, including the overall benefits. Bernice, over to you.
Great, thanks, Doug. So I just wanted to start this meeting off reminding us all while we're here, the BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project is the largest infrastructure project in the entire Bay Area. And with that, I wanted to remind everybody, what are the benefits? And there's key 3 areas of what those benefits contribute to. And one of them are significant environmental benefits, significant mobility benefits, and significant economic benefits. On the environmental side, huge reduction in carbon emissions, eliminating nearly 4 million auto trips a year, and connecting nearly 2 million transit-dependent riders. Also, huge mobility option for the nearly 6,000 students that take transit going to San Jose State. And also on the economic side, really spurs a lot of development and housing. About 60 million square feet will be spurred by this project. So just wanted to kind of just frame it, why we're all here, why we're doing this, and how important this project really is to the community. So next slide, please. This is our framework to completion, and we've updated it. And if you look, starting in 2022, that is our engineering and procurement. As you all know, we awarded the first part of the biggest and largest contract for the tunnel and track work. That was back in May, and we've been commencing advancing design. Early construction will overlap with the procurement process. We have 3 other contracts to award, so we're still in that procurement process. We will begin major construction in around the 2024 timeframe, and that will commence into the 28-29 timeframe. We'll do then system testing and integration, that's the green, with passenger service slated sometime, as early as 2030, but we're not 100% certain on that time right now. So we're not drawing a hard line right now, but plan for 2030. But we'll be updating the cost and budget schedule once the contracts come in and we have more cost and schedule certainty. Next slide, please. So there are 3 kind of major activities going on right now, and that is advancing the design. FTA issued a letter of intent back last October, and we have 2 years to advance those contracts, like I said, and come back with a more firm cost and schedule. We are in the midst of what is called the 90-day innovation period. We pursued progressive design build for the tunnel and track work contract. And what that does is it enables us, the owner, to engage more key stakeholders in the community as we advance design. So it provides more input into that. And concurrently, we're conducting a peer review. And then we're also concurrently conducting opportunities to refine the stations and maximize the TOD opportunities around those station areas and entrances to the stations. And I think that's it. And I'm going to pass it back to Doug. Do I have one more slide, Doug? Nope, I was good. Hey,
that's it,
thanks.
Brittany. Thank you. And with that, I'm just going to pass it over to Peter. He's a lead architect for the project. He's going to talk about station design and next steps. So Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Doug. Can everyone hear me okay? Sounds good. Cool. Thank you. I'm going to run through the current station designs for downtown and Diridon, and then also talk a bit about the refinements process that we've been going through with the city and with Spur. But just to kind of get everyone on a level playing field, I'll just run through the current station designs. The downtown and Diridon are both urban stations in that they are for people coming by foot, by bike, or by transit, not parking your car and kind of going into the station from there. There's a lot of ancillary facilities or back of house areas in these stations, about 50,000 square feet in each of them, which have to be considered. And also just kind of the ongoing maintenance requirements for all of the back of house facilities is also an important part of the planning for the station. So even though it's not something that people see on a day-to-day level, it certainly impacts the overall station design. And then an important factor for all of the stations has been the consideration of how to integrate on-site TOD or transit-oriented development into the designs of the station wherever possible. So that's been definitely key consideration at both downtown and Diridon. You go to the next slide. So this is just an overall site plan or area plan to provide some context for the downtown station. There's 3 primary facilities that are part of the station. The main or primary head house is the larger one on the right-hand side of the page, which has entrances both onto Santa Clara Street and from the future plaza that's anticipated as part of the VTA block development between Market and First. Then there's a second entrance to the station between First and Second Street also on the north side of Santa Clara Street, which is elevator only access, whereas the primary head house has multiple escalators. And then there's also a ventilation and egress structure between second and third. If we go to the next slide. So both the primary entrance and the second entrance both have very good connectivity to other modes of transit, both bus and light rail, all within the vicinity. And the green outline there is the underground platform within the tunnel. So you can see the access points relative to that. Next slide. And so the design intent for both the primary and the secondary entrance is to have a real presence on the street and to be seen as a gateway to the city, both for people arriving on BART into San Jose, but also having that sort of sidewalk presence for people entering the system. So a lot of visibility and connectivity, both from the Santa Clara Street side to the plaza side, which you can see the trees kind of on the back of that image. Other things that have really helped to kind of shape the station design has been the design review committee process, where we engaged with multiple stakeholders and got a lot of input about materials and finishes, as well as opportunities for public art, which you can see in this image. And if you go to the next one, that the surfaces of the ground level of the head house could be used for murals or other types of art, which would be picked at a later time, but still important to consider as part of the overall design. Both Diridon and Downtown, the design sort of intends to both celebrate the structure of the buildings, their deep stations, so that they both have circular shafts which go down to platform level. We want to keep them as open as possible and light and airy, so we get natural daylight coming down, as well as visual connectivity for passengers to see intuitively where they need to go. If you go to the next slide. And at the platform level, again, we wanted to both celebrate and expose the structure of the large single bore tunnel, and so the precast panels that are part of that excavation and construction are exposed, and really the material finish for the platforms. You go to the next slide. So for Diridon, what right now looks like a series of surface parking lots will in the future be a vibrant community, with the intermodal station being built adjacent. Lots of connectivity to other modes of transit, and there's been a lot of planning around the intermodal connectivity between the station, the BART station, and the future high-speed rail and Caltrain station. And so here there's also a ventilation and egress structure that's number 7 on the slide over on the right-hand side. And then there's also an egress stair off of Santa Clara Street, which is number 6 on the slide. But the primary entrance to the station is through the circular head house at the middle of the page. We go to the next slide. And so this aerial view is just showing the work that has been done on the intermodal station and the plans for the future pedestrianization of Cahill Street, so that there's a very easy connection across from the BART station to the future intermodal station. And then this slide doesn't show any of the future TOD potential, but there has been plans developed for transit-oriented development on the southern portion of the site, where you see the large plaza, that could be integrated in the future, as well as other potential opportunities. The next slide. So this is now looking as if you were leaving the intermodal station and entering BART. This would be one of the primary entrances. If you go to the next slide, this is now once you've gone through the fare gates. Here, through the design review committee process, each of the stations started to take on more unique characters. And so the walls that you see on the left-hand side of the image carry all the way down into the deep shaft. And those are the color of those terracotta panels are a mixture of the BART and VTA logos, as well as the San Jose Sharks colors. So that kind of helps to identify this station from the others. If you go to the next slide, you can see here also we're trying to use the same kind of themes of openness, celebrating the circular shaft, and creating as much openness for natural daylight to come down, as well as intuitive path of travel. So there's a stair that goes around the perimeter of the drum that you can see on the right-hand side, and then there's a single switchback on the escalators to get down to the upper platform level. If you go to the next slide, that shows the landing at the upper platform level, looking back at that feature wall that I was describing earlier, and that is also where the elevators are located. And then just on the right-hand side of the image, you can see just the opening to the upper platform. You go to the next slide. And then, as Bernice described, we've been going through a series of design refinements over the past couple of months. Go to the next slide. It's part of the approval to proceed with the CP2 contract. Part of that language was to conduct a series of workshops with the city of San Jose to explore how we might refine the station designs to improve connectivity for riders between transit systems, particularly at Diridon. At downtown, look at potential for improving pedestrian safety by introducing a potential entrance on the southern side of Santa Clara Street, as well as at both stations looking at ways that we could try to improve any integration of high density TOD. You go to the next slide. And some of the sort of guiding principles of that has to be, with these refinements, they all have to stay within the overall project footprint. They have to be buildable, operable, and maintainable, meet our sustainability goals, and also be cost effective in terms of meeting all of the budget requirements. So we've been trying to, all the options that we've been developing, trying to evaluate them based on that criteria. You go to the next slide. And one of the main things we've been exploring with the primary entrances for both downtown and Diridon, looking at different shaft configurations and exploring whether a rectangular shaft could potentially either improve vertical circulation experience or provide further potential for TOD than the circular shaft. And then we've also been exploring potential secondary entrance locations. As I mentioned, at downtown, that would be primarily to explore southern entrance. One of the key constraints has been many of the sites along the southern part of Santa Clara Street in that particular area are historic resources, but we're also looking at ways to try to work either with that or find other sites. And then at Diridon, it's also about trying to find those additional entrances that would best integrate with the future DISC project. Next. And then once we have started to narrow down some of those options that we're exploring, we've also been working to agree on a series of evaluation criteria to measure and judge the different options from a passenger experience perspective, looking at everything from the way they integrate with their surroundings to, which has the shortest and easiest travel time, to implementation metrics like, is it within the cost and how constructible is it? So there's a sort of table that we're working on developing that we'll use to score these different options. And then we're also using a lot of the criteria from BART in terms of passenger experience and looking at different types of users and making sure that we're considering all of their needs as well when we're looking at the different options. And if you go to the next slide, this is just showing the overall schedule of this refinements process, which is being run in parallel with the CP2 contractors innovation process. So by the end of September, we kind of hope to be through the refinements process. We're currently in this public engagement period. We'll then go to a period of internal VTA review, and then there'll be more engagement and workshops and ultimately VTA board meetings to share the results from this refinement process. And then just going back to the sort of passenger experience evaluation criteria, this is a sample of some of the things that we have agreed with or developed along with the city and SPUR to describe what we think are important for passenger experience, and we'll be kind of looking for your input on these as we go to the second, more hands-on portion of the meeting. You go to the next slide, and that takes us straight to the polling questions. So I'll hand back to Doug.
Great, thank you, Peter. This, as
Yep.
Peter mentioned, this is the part of the meeting where we're transitioning, to focusing on hearing from you. First, we have some polling questions we'd like to ask you. They're intended to provide us with information the VTA may use to inform the next phases of station design, and to get you thinking about how you and others may use the stations, so they have user perspectives fresh in mind for the small group breakout discussions that'll follow. The breakout discussions that'll follow the polling questions, they include an interactive exercise that's focused on better understanding your and your community's priorities for the next phase of station design. The last slide we showed, if we could go back to that previous slide, is also essentially the last polling question. We'll ask you which of these potential evaluation criteria you think are the most important, and then we'll use the results from this polling question to facilitate the discussions in the small group breakout portion of the meeting. So we'd like to talk with the small groups about if your group disagrees with the results from the larger room and why. And then near the end of the small group breakouts, we'll ask each room to pick a CWG member for a more packed larger group about some of the key things that the small group your small groups talked about. So with that, let's jump into the polling questions. So some of these questions are focused on both stations, and some are specifically about the downtown or Diridon stations. This first question is focused on both stations, and it's about the trade-offs between station design refinements and associated potential project delays. And up above, it starts with a framing statement, which is station design refinements could delay the project schedule due to additional requirements such as environmental clearance or construction duration. We want to hear from you, and that's the question that just popped up. Do you want BART to be operational as soon as possible, even if that means some desires aren't incorporated? Do you think a couple of years of delay is okay to incorporate some high priority desires? Or do you want to make sure that every desire is incorporated, even if the project is delayed by many years? And then I'll give a little bit of time for folks to enter their answers. Once I start to see it stabilize, I usually do like a 5-second countdown to let folks know to get your answers in. So I'm still seeing some answers come in. Seeing it start to stabilize, and we'll share the results in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kristen, would you please share the results? And Adriana's going to take a screenshot of these that were your facilitators in the small group. We'll have these results available to talk through with you in your small group sessions. On to the next question. There we go. This one's focused specifically on the downtown station, and it's about the trade-offs between design refinements and the closure of Santa Clara Street. We asked the same question about Diridon next. So the framing statement, to accomplish some suggested design refinements, closure of Santa Clara Street may be required. And there's the poll. Would you not want Santa Clara Street to be closed at all? Are you okay with Santa Clara Street being closed for a few months, for a few years? Or are you okay with closing Santa Clara Street for however long it takes to incorporate the desired refinements at the downtown station in particular? And I'm seeing stabilize. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kristen, would you please share the results? And Adriana, would you be sure to capture them? And then the next question, it's the, Kristen, did you got the results shared? Cool. Next question, at the Diridon station, the same question for Diridon. To accomplish some suggested design refinements, closure of Santa Clara Street may be required. So at Diridon, are you okay with, would you not want to see Santa Clara closed at all? Are you okay with it if it's closed for a few months, a few years? Or are you okay with closing Santa Clara Street however long it will take to incorporate the desired refinements? And I'm seeing it stabilize. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Please share the results, Kristen. Adriano, please capture them. Thank you very much. And then the next question is about the theme of this one is about preferences for entrances beyond or in addition to the primary entrance buildings, which have been, as Peter mentioned, which have been designed to be centralized gateways between the stations and surrounding communities. This, just for reference, a secondary head house that's currently included in design for the downtown station is shown in the image in the lower right of the slide. And the image on the left is an example of a sidewalk entrance. It's common in the BART system. So the question for the downtown station in particular, when considering entrances beyond the primary entrance building, do you prefer an additional off-street entrance building? Are you okay with smaller sidewalk entrances that are typical in the BART system? Or do you think an additional entrance isn't necessary? And I'm seeing it start to stabilize. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kristen, would you please share the results? Thank you very much. And the next slide. So same question for the Diridon station. When considering entrances beyond the primary entrance building, do you prefer an additional off-street entrance? Are you okay with smaller sidewalk entrances like in the current BART system? Or do you think an additional entrance isn't necessary? Seeing responses stabilize. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kristen, please share. Adriano, please capture. And then the last polling question before we get into the small group breakouts, and this is the question that we intend to be the thing that really drives the small group breakouts discussion, at least to start. So as I mentioned earlier, the content and the body of this slide is the same as the potential evaluation criteria that was shared in the slide earlier. Please let us know which of these potential evaluation criteria you think about are the most important, and then we'll dig into the details of results and your thoughts behind your responses and in reaction to the responses from others in the small group breakout sessions that are up next. So which is the most important? There's accessibility, mobility. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'll read the beginning. Accessibility, mobility, you can read the definition on the other side of it. Aesthetic expression, identity, intermodal connectivity, legibility or direct journey, natural light in the stations, integration with TOD or transit-oriented development, travel times from the fare gates, or visibility and safety, feeling safe throughout the station. So we'll give it a little bit of time for the answers to stabilize. Okay, seeing them start to stabilize. 5-second countdown for people to get the responses in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kristen, would you please share the results? And Adriano, please capture into the document for discussion in the breakout sessions that are up next. Okay, so now we're going to transition to the small group discussions. In these discussions, Kristen, did you already share the results? Yeah, okay, I see something different on my screen. Great. So now we're transitioning to the small group discussions. In these discussions, as I mentioned previously, we want to talk with you about the results from the polling questions that we just received now from the larger group. So the facilitators in the small group discussions may ask you questions like, what do you think about the polling results? Do you generally agree with the polling results? Did anything about these results surprise you? As I also said, that they'll have screenshots available to share so you can reference and inform the discussions. And then following these questions and the discussions, we'll ask if there's additional detail that your group thinks that the project team should take into account as part of the next steps for the station when we get back together to report back in the larger group. So in these small group breakout sessions, there'll be a message sent out 5 minutes before the time for the session ends. And then that's when your facilitator will ask your group to identify a CWG member to report back to the larger group. And then after the CWG member who report back is identified, we ask that your small group discuss what your group wants to report back to the larger group following the small group discussion. And your facilitator will be available to take notes throughout the session. And if we could go to the next slide, please, Kristen. This is the tool that your facilitators will use to drive the discussion. So the topics here, the categories, are the same as the potential evaluation criteria that we just asked the polling question on. So we're going to ask, do you agree with the overall group? If so, move that box over. If not, where does your group think the box should go and why? And then after that, we'll pick a CWG member to report back after the discussion ends. Then we'll come back together and we'll have a period for report back where there'll be a lot of time for the CWG members to talk in the larger room. And we also ask that if you're with an agency that regularly engages with the BSV project, that you more listen, right? We have a lot of opportunities to engage. Please let us hear from other folks like CWG members and members of the public. So the next step is we're going to break out into these small group breakout discussions where there's a lot of space for all the people in the room to talk in smaller groups. Before we do that, let me ask if there's any questions that we should talk about in a larger group before we go to the small groups. If there are, please raise your hand or just chime in. And seeing no hands raised, nothing in the chat or anyone chiming in, we're about to break off to the small groups. Right now it's 4:36. We're targeting 25 to 30 minutes. So we'll come back here at 5:05 and we'll send a message out, given that we're a little ahead of schedule, which is good.
You have a hand up, Doug.
Do I have a hand up? I don't see that hand up. Whose hand is up?
Rod Diridon.
Rod, yes, please. Rod, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Is that better?
I can hear you, but there's an echo.
I guess that works now. Turn that off. Sorry to be all confused here. This technology stuff passed us 83-year-olds by a long time ago. It seems that you're not considering the future high-speed rail system and the expansion of Caltrain that's going to be rather magnificent. Am I missing something, or have you set up a procedure for integrating that into it in the future, or how are you going to consider that? That could well dump 1 million people, many millions of people a year into the station, primarily commuting in from the Central Valley and South County.
I think you've raised something similar at one of these CWG meetings before. And I think I can pass to Bernice or Aaron if you want to take a stab at that, or if you'd like me to address the question, I can take a shot.
So, hi, it's Bernice, and we definitively are working with the Diridon Integrated Station Concept Group with all of the partners. We are definitely recognizing the future effort of the DISC group and looking at as part of our station refinement efforts, what that integration might be, but also keeping in mind that that is yet to be definitive as we're designing. So we're going to get done first and working with them on where our facilities might be fixed, and working with them on what we do fix. And Erin, I don't know if you want to add anything to that if you're on here.
No, I think that was well said. As you're saying, we've been working with the group proactively, just haven't found that final solution yet.
Well, I am sympathetic to you because they haven't come up with one. And it's their fault for delaying and not getting a course of action preferred alternative established. But whatever the case, eventually they're going to have a high-speed rail station there. It might be 10 years from now or whatever, but it'll be there. And I don't know how you can identify accommodating something that hasn't been defined, but you might think on it.
And that has been, yeah, that has been part of the station refinements, the meetings we've been having with both Spur and the city of San Jose, is trying to find answers to that question of, you know, potential future entrances and how we could try to anticipate where those might be and plan for them.
Is Boris taking part in any of those conversations? The Northern California
Yes,
director?
Boris has been involved in some of the conversations that we've had as to the DISC partnership.
Good. Well, I wish I could give you more comfort in knowing what's going to happen, but I guess nobody does. But something's going to happen, and it's going to be big.
I'll also mention that intermodal connectivity is one of the categories here on this priority pyramid, and there is more time for us to be back together in a large group for discussion. So I think it's helpful. Thank you very much for that, Rod, and very appreciative that you're here. But I'm going to ask if there's questions on how the small group exercise works, or it happens after that in the meeting. I'll take those. Otherwise, I think we should get into the small group discussion to give everyone a chance to speak, and then there will be time when we get back to also talk in this group again. So are there any questions about the small group breakout sessions, the structure of them, what happens in the meeting after that, before we let folks go into the small groups and talk? So I don't see any hands. Please let me know if I'm missing some, or people can chime in if I'm missing you. Just want to give some time, because after this we will be divided into small groups. So, but I'm not seeing any. So with that, I think we're going to break into the small groups. Let me talk about time. So the goal is to be back from these at about 5:10, and so we'll shoot 5:10, and we'll cut back on the around 5:05. We'll ask the facilitator work with the group to identify a CWG member to report back. And then we'll see you back here at 5:10 for your CWG member to report back to the larger group about what your small group talked about and wants to communicate to the larger room. So with that, Kristen, would you please send us off into the small room? Oh, before we go, your facilitators are going to be Peter, Aaron, and Adriano. So would you all just please come on camera and wave? Peter, the project architect. Aaron is the station coordinator for the downtown station, and Aaron for the Diridon station. So with that, we'll see you in your please enjoy your small groups. We'll see you back here at 5:10. Looks like we have everyone back. Nice to see you all on camera.
Like Star Trek, we just got beamed back into the starship, mothership.
People are getting fired up, Doug. Fired up.
That's good to hear. We like to hear that there's some passion.
Yeah.
I also, when you all are in the small group, you know, there's a small group of us to sit here in the main room, which I like to call the coffee and cookies table, if we were in an actual public meeting. So we got beamed back to the coffee and cookies table. Well, Well, welcome back, everyone. It's not a bad place to be. So let me stop talking so we can hear from everyone. I hope you had a nice time in your small group breakouts. We do want to hear from you. We're just gonna go to the facilitators, ask them to introduce the CWG members and say the things that they'd like to say about, from their discussion. So Peter, who is the CWG? Would you please introduce your CWG member and share the priority pyramid from your exercise? Peter, you're muted.
Still muted. Okay, there we go. Everyone hear me now. Sorry, we were cut off just as we were deciding our report back person, but I think Chloe has kindly volunteered to the chat. So I'm gonna share my screen and Chloe can go through some of the comments that we went through. Is that the right thing to do, to share the pyramid and the notes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Chloe can speak to it.
Perfect. That's what we shall do.
Chloe, you're up.
Awesome, folks. And let me know if my audio cuts out, if it's been a little wonky today. In talking through the polling results, we did talk about our concern to the impact of any closures, especially long-term closures on Santa Clara Street and the downtown station, especially to those storefronts. We also specifically talked about the impact to BIPOC-owned businesses and some of the challenges that were previously seen with the bus rapid transit construction along Alum Rock and way back in the late 80s with some of the work around light rails installation and the transit mall work then. We also talked a bit about the some delays being acceptable, especially if there's increased TOD and the ability to maximize affordable housing along these transit corridors. Folks, just making sure I didn't forget anything from our group.
Perfect. I think that sounds good.
And then from our pyramid group exercise, we did talk about how it's hard to pick just one item that's the most important out of those selections, but that TOD integration really is key. There was some surprise that intermodal connectivity was not higher. And we ended up grouping in accessibility and mobility, visibility and safety, and intermodal connectivity as really that next tier of priorities. We also talked a bit about how the perception of safety at this point in time that we're seeing downtown is key, and maybe a challenge that we may see more or less over time as we work on this project.
Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you, Chloe, and good job on the timing. We have about 5 minutes allocated for each CWG, for each small group breakout. Adriano, do you want to introduce the CWG member your group selected and share the priority pyramid?
Yes, I will share my screen. We were also in the middle of deciding who would be presenting, and we thought that the best way would be for a joint sort of presentation. So with that said, I will pass it off over to maybe Elizabeth first, and then Alan, feel free to chime in as you see necessary.
Okay, we spend very little time on the poll questions because we want to focus on priority pyramid group exercise. So what we did is first we separated out visibility, safety, and accessibility, mobility options out of the pyramid because these are essential, so they cannot be compromised and they don't really kind of something that we can prioritize. We put that in, and then Alan, do you want to go to the first one or go second? We should take turns.
Yeah, the TOD integration to me is the time savings part. You have essential things that you walk by: drugstores, pharmacies, dry cleaners, food. And that saves me another trip. And I don't want to walk around the block or something. It's like it needs to be on the way. The space that currently showing looks like a suburban mall. It's just way too open for a high density. It needs to kind of conceptually show me that this is a high density downtown station. And right now it doesn't do that. And I think you can do that with showing conceptual retail there and showing how that's going to work and where's my, breakfast coffee going to be. So the TOD integration, I think, is critical to make this work. And as you can see everywhere else in the world.
And then we put in the next tier, intermodal connectivity, aesthetic expression, identity. I think these are things that are going to represent the station, the usability or the user feelings for using the station. I mean, aesthetics sometimes could be compromised, especially if there's a budget issue. But this is going to be like the station for people to be exposed to their first impressions downtown San Jose. So I thought that we think this should be very important. Then intermodal connectivity is kind of, getting, again, that goes into the ridership issue. The more they're connected, integrated into the transportation network, the more we're going to get people onto the BART system. Alan?
Yeah, I agree. The intermodal is a higher priority because people on multiple transits for a particular commute, you want to make sure that they reduce the time between transits.
Right, and then the last tier, we just saw the travel time, the direct journey, because this is going to be a very small percentage of the total time people spend in the BART station for traveling. We're talking about 30-minute trip, and these will probably take 30 seconds to a minute. Therefore, it's kind of least significant aspect of this pyramid. Natural lighting, people going to BART thinking they're going to be underground. So I don't think that little bit of natural lighting they're going to get when they enter or when they exit is going to make that much difference.
Okay, does that wrap it up for your group, Adriano? It sounds like it does.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, okay.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and then next up, Aaron. Aaron, would you please introduce your selected CWG member and share up the priority pyramid notes?
Yes, and we have Adina on ours. You guys see that okay?
Yeah, so like the previous group, we thought that accessibility, mobility, visibility, and safety were must-haves. So we also put that as a, must be a part of anything. We put the intermodal connectivity and travel time up at the top, seeing that the preeminent goal of this is a transportation project for people to move without driving, and that's closely related to the legibility and direct journey. We also thought that TOD was a fundamental, but also didn't want to have TOD really severely compromise the travel time and connection. So if you have something that you need to get into a great TOD building, but to get to the station, you have to go through an impossible to find basement entrance. We shouldn't be compromising transportation to be able to do the TOD, but the TOD is fundamental. We thought that aesthetics and natural lighting, aesthetics are important and natural lighting is good, but we shouldn't be compromising the functionality of a TOD in an urban area and transportation, but should take whatever it is that is done and make that really beautiful and make it, communicating the identity within the functional constraints. And similarly with natural lighting, we want that to support the other goals as opposed to as a primary goal in and of itself. And wanted to really convey thanks to the team that has got to this point in terms of thinking about making refinements that address the goals that were identified by the city and other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have a little bit of time. So if there's other folks that would like to say anything based on your small groups or otherwise, or share reflections based on the report back from the small group sessions, we have about 5 minutes for that. So if you want to say something before we get into next steps, please raise your hand. Adriano, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. One of the big things that I think came out of our discussion in the group that I did want to share with the overall group is just a clarification, both within the realm of the priority pyramid as well as in the polling questions, that these were not intended to be about a single bore or twin bore discussion. The project is really advancing for now in the single bore direction, while a parallel independent peer review is being advanced. And so we heard some feedback from our members that the questions might have been answered a little bit differently if they were, I think they were largely perceived in the under the umbrella of, well, if we do twin bore, we do this. If we do single bore, we do this. And so wanted to just, again, make it very clear to everyone that what we were asking about was maybe opportunities for connections on one side or the other that might cause disruptions to the street, or construction methods that could be employed to change the design of the station and how the station itself functions. But the project is still a single bore project.
And Bernice, I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, I think one other thing that came out of our group, and Adina hit on it a little bit as well, when we're talking about travel time, we sort of define it for our group because it wasn't about the overall travel time and trip savings travel time. We were really focusing on the time from like when you enter the station, when you get down to the boarding platform. So I'm not sure how everyone interpreted that, but that's sort of what we were focusing on for this exercise was, and you know, what was that experience going from when you enter the station to when you actually board the train?
And I think for the Diridon group, just to add, we were looking more as how long would it take you to transfer from BART to another mode? So similar type thing. It was not the overall trip. It was from one mode to the other.
Thank you. And Bernice, I can be corrected, but as Adriana said, VTA's position is largely moving forward as single board, right? There's another peer evaluation coming forward. And there was a lot of work put in to share the potential evaluation criteria, which are places where we think the community's feedback has the most opportunity to shape where the project goes next. So really trying to hone in on that point. And Bernice, I don't see you correcting me. You can though.
No, I think exactly. I mean, I think we posed all this based on our current project that's been environmentally cleared, and you know, we have the contract, and they're looking at these different innovations and things and what might be able to be accommodated. And so we wanted to just get further feedback how we could enhance the existing project and try to accomplish all of those goals that we've heard from our key stakeholders and the community.
Great. Anything else, Adina? Yes. Adina, you're muted. I can also unmute you. Sorry, you're still muted. I tried to beat you to it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was, instead of being unmuted, I was remuted. So in terms of the responses to the polling, there did seem to be some tolerance for some street closures, but in that case would, I think, really want to see mitigation for the businesses and protecting businesses from the impacts of disruption. And I think that's an important point that wasn't directly in any of the survey materials. And then I also wanted to share something that I maybe ranted a little bit about in our small group, because while I think some of us are saying like, well, of course we're going to have, our travel time is going to be okay. We are living in a world of where Millbrae Station exists in a physical reality, where the amount of time it takes to get from your entrance to where you're going is, long and confusing, and in a way that can like make you miss your train or miss your bus. So I do think that is, we have examples in this region of really, stations that are not well designed for getting a passenger to where they are going. So I think that we need to work on it to make that good.
Bernice, did you want to respond?
So I just wanted to just briefly mention the small business resource program that we are working on. And it will have several components. Part of that will be technical assistance, signage and wayfinding, marketing, and then we are working on what specific criteria would be based on impacts, level of impact, for a financial element grant program in that. So just wanted to let everyone know, and we'll probably be presenting the draft plan to the board, I think October. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you very much. And with that, I think we need to transition to next steps to be able to adjourn on time. Kristen, if you could bring those slides up. Thank you. Next slide, please. So there's a big community engagement opportunity coming up on August 27th. It's right outside VTA's downtown San Jose Customer Service Center, because it's central location and next to the Customer Service Center, which is really great for us for logistics. So you've probably already seen that advertised some, and we intend to ask questions at this event that are very similar to the questions we asked at the CWG meeting. So the ones we asked today, you expect there'll be some boards that ask very similar questions, so we can get a lot of good feedback. And then that feeds into the larger process for overall station design that Peter shared earlier. Next slide, please. There's also an upcoming joint VTA BART working committee meeting on August 26th. There's a VTA Board of Directors meeting September 1st. We'll have the next round of CWG meetings in September. This one for the downtown and Diridon stations on the 13th, and then a VTA Board of Directors workshop on the 16th, all of which are open to the public. Next slide, please. And then there's the regular reminder to stay involved. If you're not already on this list, or you know others who might want to follow the project, you can always subscribe for updates to the project website. You can follow the project on Facebook or Twitter. And I actually think that last bullet we have sent out that survey, haven't we? So that you should have gotten, people along the alignment should have gotten a postcard asking them, what their contact information is, like email, phone, text, physical mail, what those are and how you like to be communicated with. And then Elizabeth, you have the one last question in the chat. Can slides from today be shared with the public? I think Bernice, Kristen, I think they normally are, but I'm not part of that process. Do one of you want to take that question? Bernice, do you want to take that one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think we used to at least post the actual presentation on the website as a follow-up on the meeting. I don't know about I was wondering if Elizabeth was meaning the pyramids that we came up with today. I'm not sure since those are working, but so I'm not sure what she's asking, but the presentation that we shared today, we definitely post those.
Okay, I meant the attachment that came with the email that, we usually post on the website. So, okay,
yes.
Thanks.
Jim, did I see
I've got
your
a question. Did I read that right? That there's another CWG meeting in 4 weeks?
That's correct. Yes, this one is they're normally every quarter. These were originally billed as summer socials, right? Attendance has been up this round, but we think it's been dwindling largely because things are virtual. And so with COVID going away, we wanted to do something in person, but COVID came back. So we already had these billed, so we're having them. So this is out of cycle, but the next one is the regular quarterly one, which we expect to go back to the regular format. We had these ones were really focused on telling the story of how the stations got to be designed to where they are, where they're going next, and collecting feedback they can shape where they go next. Did that answer your question, Jim? Cool. Lucas, did you mean to say something?
Oh, no, I was saying by the Samantha, I didn't realize it wasn't muted.
Okay. Well, it's always fun to hear you talk. I don't know you two right now, but I always want to hear what you have to say when you come up. Is there anything else? We are at time, but if there's any lingering questions, we can hang out just for a second. If there's anything lingering, if there's not, we'll adjourn. So I'll pause for a second. If you have something, please raise your hand. or chime in or drop something in the chat.
One thing I brought up at the beginning of the breakout is that the poll, to me, the poll questions all talked about, would you be okay with any delays as long as you can get station entrances from across the street? And that's how I answer those questions, because that's what it's like you're asking. Then Adriana mentioned, oh, this could be a couple other things, and I would answer differently for different projects. So, I mean,
You'd like to know what the trade-offs are, right? I guess that's how I interpreted that. Like
to me, station access from across the street will reduce the number of traffic fatalities of people running across the street. So to me, it's critically important that we do that. Other things I don't, well, I'm not going to tolerate years of delay for something that's not as important.
Yeah, Alan, you bring up a great point. When people think about safety, right, they think about sort of, nefarious activity. They don't think about pedestrian safety. So great point.
I will also share that we'll capture that in the meeting notes to make sure that perspective is understood. And there's also a lot of opportunities for engagement at the community social and other tabling events, where we'll take that into account and try to clarify that in the next phases of engagement. Rod.
Doug, regarding that question I asked at the very beginning, the Diridon Joint Powers Advisory Board meets quarterly. They have done very poor work in terms of getting anything decisive done after 20 years of activity. And this group, you might for this group send the staff of the Diridon JPAB encouragement to come forward with station design criteria as soon as they can, so that you can integrate it as much as you can in your project. Just put them on notice that you want it.
We'll capture that in the meeting notes. Bernice, do you want to respond directly now?
I can just say that I think it was just last week we did a presentation to the DISC Technical Advisory. So they are sort of up to date on where we are with the station designs and this whole process that we shared today. But not to say that we can't engage further with the advisory committee.
Some of us are moving pretty hard or pushing pretty hard to change that advisory committee to a full permanent joint powers board with the responsibility of getting an environmental impact clearance for the station area, the integrated station area, and not making much progress.
Thank you for that feedback, and also acknowledging we're almost 5 minutes over now, and particularly for staff that may have things they need to do after this. I think I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone very much for participating, and we will see you again in September.
Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.